I'm really proud of the work we've done here over the last 6 years. For a little blog and a little podcast, we sure have come a long way. And my hope is that we can continue to do that at a time when America really needs us and the world really needs voices that are obviously pro-democracy. And obviously that's a big thing that we stand for, but we're also pro-American. You see the amount of criticism Joe Biden gets on a regular basis from people who call themselves the left. I don't know what the Atlantic is on about lately and all these other, I call them now the alt left. We are 100% behind the mission of finding the truth. So it costs as little as $5 a month. We recommend $10 a month. It's a bit of money. I get that it's a bit of money in tough times. But when you think about the work that we're doing, when you think about the fact that we're helping democracy survive, and when you think about the impact we've already proven to have on the news cycle, it is money well spent. And it's money well spent for you and for generations still to come. There are so many interesting stories yet to be uncovered. Plus, of course, we're in an election year. We're really excited to be a voice during that election year and help the understanding of what's been happening to America since 2016 and how we're going to ultimately defeat it. Thank you again for your support. It's been unbelievably appreciated, and we're grateful for everything you've done for us. And we'll continue to serve you and serve our audience if we can. We just urge you, as many of you as possible, to join up at patreon.com/narrative. And hello, everybody. Welcome to Narrative Live. It's good to be with you tonight. Hey, Eric Garland, nice to see you.
Get yourself together. It's Tuesday.
You know, every day flows into another because it's just endless amounts of news. And there is so much big news this week. This week really is, you know, we have been waiting for a week where we could actually sit around and listen to a logical hearing conducted by proper investigators who can actually help settle some of the differences in this country. And this is the week we actually get to see some of that. We get to hear it. We get to sit around as a country and go through this cathartic process of going through a hearing. What are you looking forward to?
Speaking as a DC dork here, I've never heard this much excitement about a congressional hearing. Like, I cannot wait. But hey, that's what it is. We're going to hear noted Democratic Socialist of America activist Liz Cheney.
That's so funny.
Did you see her on Sunday, Zeb? Did you see her giving the interviews?
Good. She was so good. I really have grown to like her a lot, and I can't believe I say those words. But I'm
going to see you in 4 days. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, we got plenty to talk about.
And she was like, you got to do this. It's your responsibility. It's your civic responsibility as an American to watch and to opine and to care about what's going on Thursday. And there's just no excuse for us showing up, which brings me to Fox News. It's not okay for Fox News not to be covering this momentous, historic event that they helped create. I mean, it's not just about January the 6th. It's also about the big lie.
Fellas.
It's the big lie. It is what caused January the 6th. They're the ones who pushed it. And now when the hearings come around, oh, no. We don't like this. We don't like the people investigating. We don't like what might come out. This is total crap. I mean, this is the story you've been pushing. They're not even going to have a
fact-checking screen up there.
Yeah. You know, they can go afterwards and say whatever they want to about it. They can go afterwards and say, that was the biggest load of lies you've ever heard in your life. Everything was manufactured. The liberals want to own you. You name it. They can say whatever they want. But not to carry it is the ultimate admission of guilt. It's the ultimate admission of the fact that they are part of the scheme, and they're just too scared to have it show up on their air.
They don't want additional facts in an indictment for accessory after the fact. Because accessory, you get half of whatever the sentence is, and in a seditious conspiracy, it's 20 years. So half of that's 10 years. I mean, you know, as a TV producer, I might not want to do a dime in jail over accessory.
I mean,
for that.
It's kind of ridiculous that you've got an operation calling itself a news operation that is even in a position where they're so complicit in an event like this that they no longer can be considered journalists. I mean, they're just foreign agents at this point. You're no longer functioning as a journalist when you're organizing, advising, helping out, doing whatever else they were doing on January the 6th. And then when the final hearings come around, when the opportunity to actually air all this laundry out, which is truly a cathartic thing every time it happens in the world, because you finally can get a unifying moment for the country, they're like, oh, no. We're not interested. It's so weak and misleading, and I hope Americans see through it. And, you know, this is a good time to call your cable companies and say, why is this trashy foreign intelligence operation of a TV network available to basic cable? Why is it there at all? I mean, if it's going to be there, it should be on a faraway tier super expensive and hard to get to. But otherwise, it shouldn't be available to people on basic cable. It's one of the first few things that they get, or whatever the first second tier that people get.
I think, if there's a consumer demand for hostile foreign intelligence propaganda, that's fine. I wonder why it goes out to our armed services on TV.
Mm-hmm.
That's not very helpful.
I mean, we discussed on the show just recently that he's still taking money, Murdoch, from the Chinese.
Oh, yeah. $100 million US dollars worth,
So what, we're okay with this? We're okay with Mr. Anti-China is now taking money from China?
Well, his wife was an MSS spy.
Exactly.
I mean,
And it drives me nuts. But I'm looking forward to everything except tearing apart Fox News, but I'll enjoy that as well, because that'll be a good thing to do. On narrative.org, I also have a thing that I've been working on for literally, I think, 17 months. That's how long this whole process has taken. But, since day one after the insurrection, I've started to put together one of my charts, because that's how I organize my mind in terms of who's involved and who's not doing, who isn't involved, where do they line up, in which categories, what type of operatives are they? Are they officials? Are they activists, instigators, influencers, you name it? And for the last 17 months, this thing has been slowly coming to fruition. It's a one-pager, which will allow our viewers, and for anyone else who wants to use it, an opportunity to see the whole thing in one big, giant scale, or at least one big page. So I'm going to throw it up here just so we can show everyone what it looks like. I've also, a shameless way of trying to raise money for our programming here, also have it on our narrative shop where people can download a high-res version of it. It is actually quite nice. And you can also
have it as your wallpaper.
Yes, that's a good idea. And you can also have it as actual
bingo card.
Oh yeah,
and bingo also, cards. Yeah. As the indictments come down, you know.
I actually thought it might be a little bit like a bingo game, because as people's names come up, you might want to cross them off and see if, or at least circle them and see if they made it into the big chart. Because this is the big chart. It's a little bit hard to read because it's a lot of detail, and I was trying to put the names in there as well, and there's just too much detail at that point. But you can see that it's divided into quite a few sections. There's people involved in the Capitol, not everybody, because they wouldn't fit in either, but certainly the senators and the Congress people involved there. Below that, you see what was going on in the Pentagon, the 6 people that certainly raised a lot of eyebrows in terms of their involvement in what was happening. You've got the SCOTUS involvement through Ginny Thomas. And then you've got people at the White House and the periphery around the people at the White House who helped set up all of January the 6th. You've got the VP's office, which is becoming such an important storyline here about what the VP did that day and choosing not to be taken away by Secret Service. And then you've got this bottom right corner, which I call my Russian corner or my Kremlin corner, because there's a lot of Russian operatives, which I found really surprising in the amount of Russian operatives involved on the January the 6th insurrection. Above that, you see the OAN network and the Washington Times, which was shown you before, belongs to the Moonies. And then above them, the Epoch Times and NTD, which are China. Those are the influence operations, which were media influence operations, which for months and months and months, I should have Fox News up there too, helped position everything that was going on before January the 6th. So people started to believe the big lie. And then on the top row there, working backwards, you'll see that some of the organizers, Ali Alexander, Nelson from ALEC, and then that's Carolyn Wren, who's there raising some of the money. And below them, what we've called the militias, including Enrique Tarrio and also the name who always...
Which one? Stuart Rhodes?
Yes, Stuart Rhodes. I don't know why. I have a blind spot around him, but yes, Stuart Rhodes. So, interesting indictments that came down. We're going to go through them in detail. And then, of course, what happened at the Willard.
Hold on. Just a quick look at this overall. This bunch of mugs. This is like the worst night on Tinder or Grindr ever, right? left. She left. Ah!
Yeah, it really is. There's not a looker among them, I'm afraid. Maybe that's why they turned to politics. Maybe that's why they're so bitter. I don't know. But
we call DC as Hollywood for ugly people.
Yeah, well, there you go. You said it. So it's going to be really interesting. This is an opportunity for people to see things as wide an angled lens as I could provide them on one sheet. But it looks so much like a conspiracy. It looks so much in all different parts of our government, all trying to work together to overthrow the election. And that is the key right here. I think that's what people are looking for in January 6 hearings was there, in fact, a seditious conspiracy? And where did it go? Did it go all the way to Donald Trump? Did it go to Roger Stone? Where did it stop? And I think that's going to be the trickier part, is trying to prove where it went to. But the fact that it actually was a seditious conspiracy, that seems to me as plainly obvious as it can be.
Well, that last Proud Boys indictment that just dropped, that put the shoes on the horse.
Nice.
Ready to go now. That filled in some of the language in there, filled in the final details to elevate this to the legal definition of sedition, just properly said, as a violent force, used to overturn the government, to oppose its authority, and to assert a new authority through violent force and not through the rule of law or the end of America.
This is really so critical, is this indictment. And I want to go through it in great detail with you. Now, we've been expecting this, honestly, for a long time. Ever since the Oath Keepers had their seditious conspiracy, I've been saying, well, it can't be very long before the Proud Boys had theirs, because, ultimately what they're going to try and prove in all of this is that there is a seditious conspiracy by the Oath Keepers, a seditious conspiracy by the Proud Boys, and that somehow they met somewhere, and then somehow they got orders.
Maybe in a tunnel under 15th Street, but that it was coordinated.
Yeah.
And look, we know how to skip ahead in this because we know that the Pentagon took actions, or rather a few people at the Pentagon took very specific actions to make the actions of the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers, among others, possible. Mm-hmm. And those were violent actions. And so we know that those people at the Department of Defense answer to the President of the United States. And we know that there's just a lot in here. And, we're really getting there.
Yeah. The 5 people mentioned here, these are the exact 5 people when we did our original reporting around the Proud Boys. These are the 5 people that showed up way back then. And they were clearly, obviously, the ringleaders then. They are clearly, obviously, the ringleaders now. The point of reference here is Enrique Tario, Ethan Nordine. There's Biggs. And then there's Dominic Pizzolo. I don't have a picture of Dominic Pizzolo, but he is the first person who smashed a window into the Capitol that day. So that's interesting too. These are the people who have been the leaders of the Proud Boys from the very beginning. These are the people that probably met, if I'm not mistaken, with Roger Stone way back when in Oregon in 2016. These are the same group of people that have been part of that world for a long time. And this is a seditious conspiracy. It's a pretty serious indictment. Yeah.
Yep. And it goes like just for the counts, goes to like page 2.
Wow.
I mean, it's
So talk to us a little bit about what's going on here. The seditious conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding. Yeah.
I mean, so you've got your 18 U.S. The big one up there at the top is count 1. That's the big mamma jamma. Just scroll up a touch there. It's Title 18 of the U.S. Code, Chapter 2384, seditious conspiracy. That's the one where if you connect through the intent to stop the government's authority, to overthrow the government's authority via force, that's the count. And it's historically, I'm not sure that we've ever had charges like this, maybe a couple more other times. And I'm not sure if this was the historic statute that was used. Sometimes these things slip around in legal history, but very closely related, 18 U.S. Code, Chapter 1512. And there's several sections of that's obstruction. But when you get down to that obstruction of an official proceeding, I think the C2 in there is to violently oppose. So that's when you get like the 10, 20 year per count charges. And then obstruction of law enforcement. And then it's sort of, assaulting, resisting, breaking stuff. And I forget what 10 is. Count 10.
Robbery of personal property of the United States, USC 2112, 18. So it's 10 to 18 USC.
Somebody stole a fax machine, okay?
Yeah,
or whatever.
Or a laptop, I think, from somebody. I think the Nancy Pelosi's laptop. So you got, I don't know if that's in this indictment, by the way, but there was a story.
That's not these guys. That was the weird girl and her dad.
Yeah,
and they were going to sell it to the FSB or something.
Yeah, something like that.
Don't do that, people.
No, it's a third superseding indictment, meaning it's the third time they've gone around and sort of clarified some things in here, but it's the first time they've said seditious conspiracy. So that's a big deal. What should we pay attention to here in the introduction? Are there things that you feel are the most important things to pick out of this particular first section?
Sure. Stop. Right here, the transfer of presidential power. So that's a big deal. Who's in charge of the nukes? Who's in charge of the executive branch? All that. So this is a big deal. And, they're alleging as a first fact, there was a presidential election on the 3rd of November. And because of COVID and some other things, we had, and a whole lot of inorganic problems counting votes. It took a few days before it was very clear that Donald J. Trump had lost the presidential election. And that was projected by the majority of the media and of states. And at that point, they knew Georgia was going for Biden, Pennsylvania was going for Biden. And so Trump lost. So 2 that's the legal authority. The 12th Amendment, which requires presidential electors to meet in their respective states and certify distinct lists of all persons voted for as president and vice president, number of votes of each. And so the 12th Amendment, this is where they came up with the wacky theory of if we can stop the vice president in his duty, to put into the record the presidential electors that were sent by the states, if we can stop him from that on the 6th of January, then we can say, well, hold on, we need to stop this transfer of power. And once they did that, they were looking to then, occupy. We're going to see here in this indictment that the Proud Boys were planning on occupying multiple government buildings, Senate office buildings, House of Representatives building. They were going to stop the federal government from functioning.
For how long? How long were they intending to do that?
I believe the official plan was like Jan 6th through Jan 20. And basically their thought was if you could just interfere that long and also dispatch, militias to different cities where, quote, Antifa would be attacking, they'd get the Insurrection Act, especially if like a high-ranking official was murdered, like Mike Pence or Nancy Pelosi. Clearly there's the Insurrection Act. They no doubt would have blamed Antifa for any deaths, but, that would get worked out in the wash, right?
Yes, this is really important what you're saying. You're not just saying that on January the 6th, they were trying to just, hey, let's postpone the vote and we'll have a recount in a little bit of time or whatever. They were saying on January the 6th, we're going to postpone the vote, have the Supreme Court step in and nullify the whole thing. And then until we have new or something like that. And then
now we come to Georgia and other states that they've caught these guys making forged documents to call themselves the real electors. Mm-hmm. So they were going to violently stop the vote. They were going to create enough violence to justify the Insurrection Act. Mm-hmm. Presumably, Alito would have stepped in and, given some edict that, nope, you're not, this isn't legal. You can't go ahead and, transfer power to Joe Biden. Then guns in the streets, take state capitals. They send, quote, the real electors from these states. Then Donald J. Trump is in by force instead of by a peaceful election.
So what you're describing is the most horrific scene you'd ever imagine in America. I mean, this is something you'd never in a million years expect to happen, where militias out of nowhere would suddenly show up on your streets, telling you what to do, where you could go, what time of day you could be out, take away your rights to almost everything because they'd have instituted some sort of martial law, and you would have no ability to function in the way you've been used to functioning as a free speech or free media or free anything, because basically the military would have taken over certainly some states, maybe not all of the country, but some states in readying for this new vote, which would have been under the control of a military force. I mean, we're talking about taking America and plunging it into the Soviet Union in the 1960s. It's an anathema, which you can't believe, but that's exactly what it seems that they were planning. It wasn't just we're going to be nice and polite and have another vote in a few weeks. No, they were going to come in with their weapons, try to suppress as many people as they can, suppress as many rights as they can, and force a new vote on America, which, how free and fair that would be, who knows, and basically take over the country as a dictatorship.
Yeah, it sounds bad the way you put it.
But that's what they were trying to do. There's all these nice rules and amendments and sections and things, but that's the truth of it. That's the goal. And these people are not even in jail. Some of them are, but the leadership is certainly not in jail.
There's a bunch of them are.
Yeah, but the leadership isn't in jail. Not only are they not in jail, they're still running a party. This is the same people still running the GOP. I mean, I understand being like a free country, people, you're going to be free and loose with some things, but you can't be free and loose with this kind of stuff. You can't have a party that is supportive of destroying the system that you've built in order to take it over, still in the system. I mean, I don't know. It seems ridiculous. You can't have them there, and yet they're still there. They might even win the next elections in November. So Fox News, this is why we want you to run this stuff. This is why you must run this stuff. And this is why if you're a Republican supporter of any of these parties, of any of these candidates, it's imperative that you watch this stuff so you know exactly what your party stands for when it comes to November. Because this is what they stand for, an absolute takeover of democracy.
Yeah.
Okay.
We should probably stop this.
It's bad. It's bad.
It's bad.
talk to me a little bit about what was going on with Mike Pence that day. So this is a fascinating piece of the story for me, because Mike Pence decides he's going to refuse to cooperate with Donald Trump. He's going to say no to Donald Trump and actually do his duty as described in the Constitution and authenticate the votes that were elected, that were appointed.
Yeah.
And then they try to kill him.
Well, we're going to hear about some of that, I gather, in more detail when the committee convenes. But the long and short of it, by the middle of December, I think that John Eastman character there had come up with the wacky plan that he admitted he knew was not, wouldn't pass muster at the Supreme Court. But nevertheless, it's like, well, here's what you're going to do. You're going to stop the vice president from counting, and then we can have the quote unquote real election. And, they went to White House counsel Pat Cipollone. They went to, Pence's vice presidential counsel. And they said, you're insane. We're going to die in prison. No. A good legal argument? That's not a good idea. No.
Yeah.
And Pence was like, yeah, probably not. And so then there was pressure that, in the days to follow, and especially January 5th, I believe some of Trump's rhetoric against Pence ramps up. And then on the 6th as well. And of course, we know there were people calling for Pence to be killed.
Not only calling for Pence to be killed, incited by the president, his boss, his running mate, incited by him to call for the killing of the vice president, who then proceed to try and actually get to the vice president and kill him. And he is so worried for his life that he won't even leave with the Secret Service because he's worried that he's going to be taken into some sort of, hiding place or somewhere where he might not be able to continue his official duties. And who knows what might happen to him, considering
I think he knew that if he evacuated the way they wanted with the people they wanted him to evacuate with, that he wouldn't be back to do his duty, and then they would have the justification. But that if he just survived long enough and stayed with the right Secret Service people, and, with still more to learn about that, and we may never learn all about it, but we know from his deeds that he did stick around. He did end up casting the vote on the calendar date appointed. And so even though I think if there had been, if we had some weird earthquake and the vice president could, in a normal election year, and the vice president couldn't make it to deposit the votes, we'd probably go, okay, well, the next day, because, we had an earthquake and we had to go and it was after midnight, but who cares, right? But that wasn't the point. The point was they wanted some justification to invoke the Insurrection Act and dispatch all these Second Amendment solution people into the streets.
There was also Paul Gosar, right? I mean, in his lawsuit against the vice president, that was what was waiting for Alito that night as justification to extend the vote. So you're absolutely right when you say that they were waiting for the violence and you're waiting for the Insurrection Act to be called in. They also had a plan. They knew they were going to let Gosar's lawsuit land on Alito's desk that night as things were delayed because the vice president wasn't doing his duty, quote unquote. So, this was so sophisticated, even though not really in its, in the way it appears.
It's a good way of putting it. It was sophisticated, dumb, but complicated in its dumbness.
Yeah. But they thought it out. They had a plan. I mean, they honestly thought, if A happens and B happens, which would have taken a long time to think that through. Get everyone ready, make sure Alito's on standby, make sure all this is going on. And yet they thought somehow this was going to work.
What else have you got? What else have you got after you've tried a conspiracy to give the Saudis our next generation nuclear technology?
Right. We sold us out in every other way. So sure, go for it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Also, remember January 6, 2021, what else was announced? The new Attorney General, Merrick Garland, is going to be coming. And there's actually some video footage of Roger Stone going, oh, that guy. Oh, yeah, yes, the domestic terrorism prosecutor from Oklahoma City. Yes, the appellate judge that you all screwed out of a Senate or a Supreme Court seat. He's going to be AG. He's going to be the prosecutor in chief, and he is a great judge, and he is a great prosecutor with many, many years experience dealing with the worst people out there trying to blow up the government, just like you got. Yeah, Roger's no fool.
Yeah,
he's a Dick Tracy villain, but he's no idiot.
He knows what's going on. And which is why this indictment is
He's
so
like,
important.
oh, that guy.
Yeah. It's, look, he even had his own personal axe to grind, so you can even add that to it. But I don't think he's acting on that. But he certainly would have liked that Supreme Court seat. But that's why this indictment is so important, because this is the DOJ actually doing the work that people say it hasn't been doing.
Well,
they are
no
doing
kidding, right?
Yeah.
This whole look. The Department of Justice does not have a ticker chyron like ESPN with here's how our grand juries are going, here's how our criminal investigations are going. There's even fire Merrick Garland. I mean, I think there were a lot of people that wanted somebody less effective than Merrick Garland. They wanted a lot of chaos in there because they were in trouble. Some of them even sound like they're on the left, but they were in trouble too.
Yeah,
it all depends.
Yeah.
But in paragraph 5 here, I just want to say I was on a HuffPost Live TV show with Gavin McInnes in 2013 where he yelled, he screamed at me for not being a real man or something like that. This is just as we got to know those characters. And he was the head of the Proud Boys. And I'm sad that he's not here to represent on this indictment because, you know, it could have been great.
He left the Proud Boys, right?
I don't know. Where is he? Is he gone back to Ottawa? Is he...
I don't know what he's doing these days. And I did read about it, what he was doing. It may have been that he was doing it in Canada or doing something up here, but I don't know. He certainly was taken off the scene in a hurry. I don't know why.
Yeah. Well,
and suddenly Enrique came up. Enrique, by the way, is a very unlikely leader for a white supremacist kind of movement, even though they're not technically a white supremacist movement. They sure seem aligned with those kinds of interests. And, you know, he's not the typical leader of such a thing, but...
No,
who knows? Who knows? So what does it say here? It's about so that they individuals known and unknown to the grand jury are affiliated through their membership in the Proud Boys organization. The Proud Boys describes itself as a pro-Western fraternal organization for men who refuse to apologize for creating the modern world, aka Western chauvinists. Proud Boys members routinely attend rallies, protests, and other events, some of which have resulted in violence involving members of the group. There is an initiation process for new members of the Proud Boys, and members often wear black and yellow polo shirts or other apparel adorned with Proud Boys logo and slogans to public events. This pro-Western fraternal organization for men who refuse to apologize for creating the modern world, aka Western chauvinists, it sounds to me like it comes directly out of a Russian propaganda playbook. And to me, it's that kind of language about saving Western civilization and all this stuff. Yeah. I mean, that's just Kremlin talk.
It's Kremlin-y.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird.
It's weird. No one really thinks like that in the United States, I don't think.
Unless you're part of a giant landmass, most of which used to be owned by Genghis Khan, and where the population kind of looks like Genghis Khan, and you're trying to cling to this way Western Slavic thing.
Yeah.
They're the ones paranoid about it. I mean, there's not a lot of, English and French people the West, we created the West. They know they got them. They had empires. Russia's the one that's paranoid about losing contact with the Western world.
So Americans don't really think of them as part of the West. Americans think about themselves as being the center of the universe. They're not just...
There we go.
They're not the West. They're everything. So
that's right. That's right. We think of other countries as a hypothetical. It's like, the imaginary number in math.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a variable.
Other countries out there somewhere, but not
Greece, Cyprus.
Those things.
In Africa.
Yeah. And sometimes you'll go there for vacation, but they're not part of the world. They're just... part of the rest of the world.
Well, so you do news and you've lived elsewhere. I'm an American guy, but I've lived other places. And I noticed that anytime I'm outside of the United States, the news reads like, hi, we're in the middle of the world. And there's lots of different parts of the world. And some of the news is like, this happened today in the country of Jordan. And this happened in Egypt. And this happened in Japan. And in America, it's like America. I don't know, Eurasia somewhere. And
yeah,
you got us. You nailed us.
The World Series, by the way, is not actually a World Series. It's an American series. I mean, FYI.
We don't even invite the Japanese.
You could call it a World Series.
Cubans, the other other 4 baseball playing nations of the world, but it's the World Series.
Yeah. So, that's sort of how America views itself. And, God bless America, because that's how it's been a world leader for so long. And there's something about that confidence. There's something about that, that American exceptionalism.
Through ignorance of the rest of the world, we lead.
Occasionally, maybe that's been costly. Occasionally, maybe we need to rethink that. but a lot of them, American exceptionalism and American success. And for better or for worse, it's kept the empire alive for a long time. And this is its grand test, I guess. We'll see how it does going forward. Do we care about any of this other stuff? This is all just who they are, the president's chapters.
We know a lot of this stuff.
Yada,
the guys. Let's see. There was some, hold on. Up there, the ABCD. Careful what the fuck you ask for. We don't want to start one. This is about a civil war, but we sure will finish one. If Biden steals his election, the president will be political prisoners. We won't go. Okay, so that's pretty violent. We don't want to start one. It doesn't say we won't start one, being a civil war, but we will finish one. Okay, that's November 6th. That's before they declare Biden
right. So
the winner.
What is wrong with Biden being the winner? I mean, they just sort of this general theory emerges from the Trump campaign or who knows who else in September saying, hey, we're not going to win. And we have to start preparing for the fact that this election was stolen from us, even though it hasn't even happened yet. So this is a big myth, a big lie, a big nonsense thing that's been created for America, which has America sort of, half of it, America is just consumed as absolute gospel and it's just accepting as truth. How are we going to in any way be able to chip away at that, knowing everything we know today, that that's so untrue? Yet for some reason, they have accepted this alternative mythology as reality.
Yeah. I mean, and this is where you get into Russian style propaganda of the notion that America has elections as illegitimate as its own. Mm-hmm. Let's do some real talk here. America has some imperfect elections. There is stuffing of ballot boxes. There are cash networks in some cities to do voter turnout. This is whispered on the side, but there are such things, and there have been for a long time. But that's kind of a margin of error in democracy, right? It's not to say that it delegitimizes everything. It complicates it. This is a big country, and Arkansas and Philadelphia and Illinois and California are all different places. When you look at our electoral college and you look at the fact that we have electors from each state, we are a union of states. We are not a single country the way France is. So each of those states, originally intended by the colonists as their own countries, have their own governments that contribute to a federal government. So there's going to be variations. There's going to be some stuff that's not exactly perfect. But the Russians want you to think that it's just as that our system is equivalent to theirs or China's, where there is no choice. It's run by the spy services and the internal elites, and the people really don't have a say. And that's a lie.
Like that. It's not like that. America has real democracy, actually functions like a real democracy. Occasionally, you're right. Some things might not look as kosher as they should be, but it's a real democracy. It actually works like
Vermont. Town meeting day. We're the only direct democracy left in the United States where each town meets on, March 1st, the first Tuesday in March? I forget exactly which. But every single town has to meet. The cities, there's 9 cities. The cities are left out, and every town has to meet. And it is, you want to see democracy in action, it's just a bunch of neighbors going and arguing about the snowplow budget that year. And people work it out over coffee and donut, and it's the real thing.
A necessary part of democracy is listening to each other and actually disagreeing with each other and hearing each other out and accepting that other people are going to have different points of view and then being able to agree to disagree and walk away and still be neighbors. Yep. It's a wonderful democratic thing. You don't have to go to war just because you don't like what the other person said. You just have to speak your mind.
Oh, he's crazy.
Exactly.
But you get outvoted. I mean, it's like, it's real direct democracy. Did you show up? Did you comment? Everyone gets to say his piece. And especially in kind of a small town, you can, imagine a small place and the tail end of winter, everyone kind of gets in and questions come up and somebody says something and maybe it's stupid and maybe everyone rolls their eyes. But at the end of the day, everyone gets a vote and the vote carries. So you can do it. Vermont does it and we do it. And you expand that out to an entire presidential election. We've got some things about our democracy that could use some tightening up, gerrymandering and everything else. But this burn it all to the ground was a foreign operation helped by domestic traders. This notion that this thing is so lost, it's so illegitimate. Since it's so illegitimate, you might as well burn it down. You might as well start shooting people because there's nothing. And who wants that? China, Russia, Saudi. That's who wants that.
I'm glad you mentioned all those countries because I don't want to leave the slide without reminding people exactly who did the propaganda leading up to this. Yes, it was Fox News. Yes, it was people like Roger Stone and Bannon and company. But there were news entities like the Epoch Times handed out for free to thousands, if not millions, of Americans. And their sister TV channel, NTD, which I've never even really heard of, but when you watch it, it's kind of terrifying. These are peddlers of conspiracy theories. These are peddlers of lies and Chinese propaganda. This is owned by China, and it's not trustworthy news. It's just what people are sending you to read, and that's why it's free and available to you for free on your stoop every day. It's not reliable, and yet so many people are looking at that stuff regularly and saying, oh yeah, this is legitimate. Then you've got the OAN crowd. This is the Washington Times crowd, owned by the Moonies. The Moonies, a cult with ties to Russia and maybe China, who knows? I mean, it's definitely tied to Russia as far as I can see. This is, again, an outfit that basically created the notion of an Arizona audit, that created the idea of a big lie. They not only were reporting on the stories, they were the story, and then they just amplified it themselves. And the biggest of them lot is Alex Jones and InfoWars, which clearly is a Russian operation. I mean, no other way to look at it. And clearly he is the number one inflamer of conspiracy theories on behalf of the Russians in America. Now, hopefully he's no longer going to be around for that much longer, but this is the people who've entered our very nice freedom of speech environment in the United States and polluted it with junk, polluted it with lies, and we are tolerant of it. And I don't think we should be anymore. I think it's okay to say we don't want foreign intelligence operation television networks in our country anymore. Goodbye. It's just not necessary. And then there's a Russian insider, this Charles Bausman guy, who not only was holding meetings for the Nazi party at his barn in Pennsylvania, he then attends January the 6th and is streaming live, probably to Putin or whomever.
And then where does he go right after when it doesn't work?
Moscow.
Moscow.
Leaves home without even taking down his Christmas lights. That's what he did. This is, you don't have to look very deep. There's a lot of Russia in this operation. And there's Konstantin Malofeyev, the oligarch who's tied to the Russian Orthodox Church. Very, very dangerous group of people with these former Fox News producer.
Of Crimea, the invasion of Crimea by the Russians. And then you've got Jack Hannock, who is his Fox News producer that he hired, even though he was sanctioned. Yep. And Hannock went to work for Malofeyev in 2013. Yeah.
And these guys are both spies. I mean, these guys officially are now foreign agents as they've been indicted because they contravened the Foreign Agents Act because they were trying to do the same thing in Albania and Greece and wherever it is they were trying.
Yep.
These are not good people. These people are not should not have any influence in our environment.
These are spies.
Spies. They're spies. In the classic way, spies used to be spies. They're not just there to steal documents. They're there to fuck the system up for us and influence the system. And these guys were allowed in very easily, and we should be more careful.
And look, making it Trump Russia overly focused about everything during the Trump administration, overlooked the role of Bibi Netanyahu, overlooked the role of Saudi money and networks of people in Los Angeles, overly focused on Russia. But this violent coup attempt where you had some people at the Pentagon, where you had these paramilitaries that are looking to make it seem like there is a popular movement. This is classically Russian. Mm-hmm. And there's even some terms, I can't remember them all off the top of my head, but the Pentagon guys who made it so that the National Guard couldn't respond in a timely manner and didn't dispatch the quick reaction force from the Pentagon to help quell the violence there. They would be known as Siloviki in Russian, I believe, which is sort of like your inside men. And I think the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers would be Tutushki, the guys that are on the street are supposed to knock heads in, smack journalists around, and break windows and stuff. That the Russians have terms for this. This is how you take a country that doesn't have a popular movement in favor of some pro-Russian puppet, and you make it look on TV like there was. And you need some inside guys, you need some guys on the street, you need some guys at a nerve center, directing traffic there, some political propagandists.
Politicians you bought. Yeah, no, it's not
some politicians you bought off way in advance. Yeah. That's a Russian gig. They did that all over the world for years. They know how to do it. They tried doing it in Ukraine. So as much as I try and widen the lens on the Trump Russia, I'm really interested. You got Charles Bauman takes a flight to Moscow as soon as he can. I'm interested in just how much of the Russians were behind this, because I don't think they were behind everything that happened for the last 4 or 5 years, but you can't sleep on them when it comes to the down and dirty intelligence kinetic operations.
It's what they do. It's what they do. It's their playbook. I mean, if you're going to do it against the biggest superpower in the world, you're going, even if Russia wasn't the instigator, ultimately, if China was just getting Russia to do it for them, whoever, these are the people you'd call, because Russia knows how to do this stuff. This is what they do. And so Ivan Reichland, another dude, speaks Russian, but supposedly a Green Beret and friends of Michael Flynn out there, violently.
He's Russian born. He's Ivan Reichland was Soviet born.
Yes, right. But he's a Green Beret as well, somehow. Was, I guess. And, fluently speaks Russian and, is involved in all these election campaigns. This is pretty clear. Like, you don't have to look very far that there's a lot of Russia. Not to mention Michael Flynn, who we already know is having dinner with Putin, which is a rare thing.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that maybe China is not involved behind the scenes with all these other things. Of course, they are involved in the NTDs and the Epoch Times, and Israel were surely involved in some of the stuff that was going on in the Pentagon. Certainly looks to me like some of those characters were under the influence of other countries like Israel, Saudi Arabia, who knows? But Ali Alexander himself comes from the UAE. I mean, there's other countries involved here.
The whole gang's here.
Yeah. But there's a lot of Russia. There's a lot of Russia. It's like, it sticks out. It just does. And who had an axe to grind? And who are we at war with in Ukraine right now? Russia. So, it's not hard to see how all of that connects. Speaking of Russia, a bit of a segue here, but it's worth mentioning. We've all been talking about the Oath Keepers a lot. And Stuart Rhodes, the guy's name I can't remember. Stuart Rhodes, it comes from the Rand Paul, Ron Paul universe. And he was their assistant or whatever it was. I don't exactly remember the exact title, but, he's Yale educated, super smart guy, apparently, former Ron Paul associate. And we recall, of course, Ron Paul. Ron Paul loved traveling to Moscow, loved going to Moscow, loved going to Russia and telling everyone that Putin is right and the world was wrong on Russian television. That Ron Paul. The same Ron Paul, whose son, Rand Paul, also likes to go to Russia to occasionally, hey, I'm handing a letter to Vladimir Putin. There's no mail service or something to Russia. So again, there's just another possibility that Russia could be involved in the Oath Keepers, indirectly or indirectly.
There's some Russian stuff out there.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So just, I'll put that out there. Should we go back to this indictment? We sort of haven't finished it. We have time. A few more minutes here. There's some good stuff that we got to that I want to show people.
The major stuff that is in the indictment there is that they're going to violently occupy buildings.
Right.
And they're going to stop the vote. And then they're going to hold those buildings. And then, I think the quote may be down the indictment a little bit here. We're going to get to the part where it's like, if we can just keep it through tonight, we should be good. Let's see. On December 19th, plans were announced to stop steal on January 6th to coincide with the certification of the college vote. Okay, there we go. This is the planning part. I think they just start talking about fit in or fuck off is their thing.
Yeah, there was a quote earlier on. This is taken from us. There's war, basically.
This is only for the serious ones.
Yeah, serious, man. So here we get to the actual conspiracy parts. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't see that.
Okay, purpose of conspiracy. Okay, let's not go by this. This is it. The purpose of the conspiracy was to oppose the lawful transfer of presidential power by force, by opposing the authority of the government of the United States, and by preventing, hindering, or delaying by force the execution of the laws governing the transfer of power, including the 12th Amendment to the Constitution, Title III, Section 15 of the United States Code, using force to stop Mike Pence from certifying the vote, to stop the lawful transfer of a presidential power, which is technically a self-coup. If you're already in power and you want to retain the power, it's self-coup, but it is in the coup d'etat, the cutting off of the top of the state. That's the purpose. And this is the first time the U.S. Attorney's Office has come out and said, that's what they were doing. That's why the breaking the windows. That's why the killing policemen. That's why.
With others whose identities are known and unknown to the grand jury.
To the grand jury. So there's some people who might not be indicted here whose names have come up within the grand jury. And there's others that we know about at the Department of Justice that the grand jury may not have heard about yet. If the week is young. So
that's where we're going to as we look at this hearing on Thursday. They really are going to try to build a case here.
This list is really important. So they're encouraging members of the Proud Boys to attend. They used websites, social media, or electronic communications to raise funds to support travel and equipment purchases. Now, I wonder who paid into that, and were they all Americans? And if so, if they were not Americans, who were they? If they're Americans, who are they? Obtaining paramilitary gear and supplies, including concealed tactical vests, protective equipment, and radio equipment for an attack. Dressing incognito rather than wearing their boy band uniform.
That was really interesting, right? On the day, they decided to show up only wearing these red berets. They were not dressed as they normally were with their black polo shirts and the yellow insignia, which people thought was really interesting.
In a city filled with cameras and advanced facial recognition software.
Yeah.
Nice job, guys.
Yeah.
So engaging in meetings and encrypted communications in D.C. in the days leading up to January 6th and the morning of Jan 6th to plan for the attack. So using programmable handheld radio and encrypted messaging applications to communicate and coordinate the attack. So we're saying the Proud Boys coordinated the attack. And now this is where we haven't gone in these indictments before. H, directing, mobilizing, and leading members of the crowd onto Capitol grounds and into the Capitol. They're the force that you're talking about, opposing it by force, using physical kinetic violence. This is the guys. There's a lot of people that did it. And some people, I got caught up in the moment. They didn't get caught up in the moment here. The Proud Boys didn't. Proud Boys planned it, bought radios, bought tactical vests so they could take some hits from policemen. They coordinated with others, known and unknown to us. So this is violence, and who led it? They led it. Dismantling metal barricades have been deployed to demarcate a restricted area. So they're the ones who allowed other people in by coordinating the dismantling of the metal barricades. That
basically facilitating the actual insurrection. Yeah.
Metal barricade is the signal from the government. Don't come here. We're doing something. Official business. And that happens all over DC in lots of different ways. They dismantle that. They storm They storm past those barricades, the Capitol Police and other law enforcement officers, in an effort to disrupt the proceedings. So that's their obstruction of government right there. Destroying property, including the fence and the window, assaulting law enforcement officers. So it's not just force, but also violence aimed not just at other human beings, not just at other Americans, but law enforcement officers. That's because who enforces the authority? Any functioning state has a monopoly on violence. That the law is ultimately enforced by violence. That can be putting you in handcuffs because you've drunk in public or speeding, whatever, or put in prison or possibly shot if there's an emergency, ideally. That's how we enforce the law. And by, as part of your conspiracy, assaulting and in some cases killing those officers, that's the force that tried to take down our ability to keep the authority of the government as they tried to do their duty to the rest of the country. So this is a really rich picture of violent acts taken with enormous mens rea and actus reus, the mentality, the motive, the conspiracy, the actions taken on basis of all that they were violent, that it opposed the authority through violence, that resulted in death, and that the aim was to stop America's government from functioning. That's laid out in this thing for the first time in the most stark terms.
Yeah. Yep. I got to tell you, the person who was arranging the money or calling for the donations was Roger Stone. There is video of him saying, I want money for my peaceful protesters and my teams that are going to be down there. That's who was arranging the money. That's who was calling for the funding. That's who was doing the grift. So we haven't got there yet, but I bet you that's what they're leading towards, because they've got these two seditious conspiracies, and the two happen to meet in a basement garage.
Oh, that's right.
The night before.
That's right.
It's not conjecture. That is the way it happened. And we have video. We showed it to you last week. This is what it looked like when Mr. Tario.
I want you to meet with Lieutenant Kelly.
And for prosecutors, they're going to call this a meeting of the minds. And that's defined under the law. Predicate acts in a conspiracy.
That moment right there with the Oath Keepers, Stuart Rhodes was shaking hands with Tario the night before.
I'm sure that even if they were to come by right now, I'm on my way out. So I literally just picked up my bags.
So I thought they told you 24
They didn't
hours.
give me 24 hours. They didn't want, the reason why they did that is that they didn't want me to go to tomorrow's event.
Yeah, wasn't he arrested like the day before, and now he was supposed to get out of D.C., and now he's back in D.C., or is this...
He was on his way out. He was being told to get out, and he's getting out. But he wants to do one last thing, is to meet Stuart Rhodes and Cleta Mitchell, which is an interesting choice of people to meet.
So,
He's been told to get out of Dodge, and he does, but he wants to have this meeting first. That's very telling. I mean, that's really what we're looking at here, is the meeting of the minds. This is...
And if that's Cleta Mitchell, then she's the connection both back to the White House, but also to the Supreme Court through her bestie, Ginny Thomas.
Correct.
Wife of Justice Clarence Thomas.
That's correct. And now you start seeing why this particular slide that I have here, why it all connects, because all these people had somehow been cooperating in a giant seditious conspiracy. That's really the only conclusion you can come to from all this evidence. And we don't know all of that for sure because the judge has not said that these people are guilty. We'll wait to hear from them. And,
a jury of their peers.
A jury of their peers. They're entitled to that. And we're all entitled to have a good listen on Thursday, and I hope people arrive at Thursday with an open mind, regardless of what their political backgrounds are. We should all arrive just as citizens who are concerned about our democracy and want to learn the facts, as our representatives have investigated it, and we want to learn what happened on that day and how we got there. It should be no political reason for us to start fighting on that day. We should all be open-minded about trying to figure out exactly what happened. This is their civic duty to investigate what happened on that day. It's our civic duty to be responsible citizens, to listen, to make up our own minds, and to decide, who's wrong and who's right, without the noise of these crazy people who've now owned all our TV networks and whatever. We really need to be independently minded as we approach this, regardless of where we are on the political spectrum. Sure, you'll one side or another side maybe to be right or another, but we really need to know what happened, because it can't happen again. We can't do this. This is not something we can afford to get wrong. This is something we absolutely need to get right. And this committee seems like they got the stuff. And DOJ seems to have the stuff in terms of its indictments.
And the New York Times said today that it's a way for the Democrats to turn around their doldrums in the midterms.
For God's sake,
which is why you need to support narrative, folks, because that's the level of news out there.
It makes me so mad when the media just talks against itself, we all know why, but it just makes me so frustrated.
We all know why.
Yeah. Hey, it's time for us to say goodnight. We've done best a job as I think we could tonight to explain to people why these hearings matter. Fox News, you are insane not to be covering this thing. You're all fools and you're not journalists, and America needs to wake up to your fallacy. But, hopefully they'll be watching on other TV networks and on Narrative, and they'll get to see what's going on. Whatever Fox News is planning to do, we'll make sure we counter that with some real truth and independent journalism. From that note, thank you for watching tonight, and thank you to our patrons. We really are very thankful that you support Narrative. This stuff does not happen without your support. These programs are expensive and they require a lot of tending, and your funding is how it happens. So if you're not yet a patron, please go to patreon.com/narrative and help Narrative continue its work. Good night, Eric. We'll see you Thursday.
Narrative is made possible by viewers like you. Join today and support truly independent journalism at patreon.com/narrative. That's patreon.com/narrative.